The X-Men are one of the most iconic groups in superhero history, and the mutants representing Professor X's team are some of the most famous heroes of all time. However, just how effective would they be if they were dropped into the cities of One Punch Man's monster-stricken world, where mutant abilities are less common and overwhelming physical power dominates instead? Which X-Men will be able to thrive in the face of monstrous brutality, and which X-Men will find it harder to adapt against such speed and power? Let's go over the tiering. C-Class, for enhanced humans like Moomin Rider. Even disaster level wolf monsters known to fight against C-Class heroes are typically bulletproof, which should already set the standard for the dangers to expect in these cities. B-Class, for heroes like Needlestar and Mizuki, who can slay monsters with their bare hands or weapons. While they can usually defeat wolf level monsters alone, a few of these are generally needed to tackle disaster level tiger threats, which are capable of shattering asphalt, tunneling through concrete, and penetrating steel at hypersonic speeds. A-Class is pure superhuman capability. Heroes like Stinger can blow holes into towering monsters with single strikes, and he's even able to make himself fly through sheer physicality by twirling his spear. These heroes attack as fast as lightning, can slice through automatic gunfire mid-air, and perform blitzing strikes which can kill dozens of bulletproof enemies in an instant. The A-Class are very formidable heroes who are often underrated by fans, so do remember this is a strong and respectable class to be a part of. My Masked is the next tier. Yes, you don't get through to S-Class these days unless it's through a My Mask. He gatekeeps anyone whose strength is too unreliable for S-Class, so you can think of this as a faux S-Class tier where someone is strong in a sense but not consistent enough or solid in other necessary areas for S-Class. If you're going to say, well, so-and-so should be S-Class if that guy is, that's because they achieved their S-Class rank before a My Mask's influential rise, so please bear that in mind. And finally, the S-Class. If you can reliably defeat demon level monsters who hold the power to move above massively hypersonic speeds in battle, can punch through missile shelters like they're paper, and even survive mountain erasing explosions, then you really do belong here. Incredible power, speed, skill, and durability is required, and anything less will see you overwhelmed by the fierce monsters opposing you at this level. Quick clarification before we begin. We'll be taking these characters by their general everyday iterations as fans know them, so just because there may be some comic out there where Wolverine puts Galactus on his ass or where Cyclops is powered by the Phoenix, we all know that's not the standard baseline for them. Additionally, for being ranked within One Punch Man's verse, they'll have to play by the rules of how fights typically play out here, meaning many monsters will ruthlessly speed blitz heroes they're faster than. The mutants of X-Men are very capable, however, so it's time to find out where they'd place within the hero association. Nightcrawler teleports himself into the first spot. This swashbuckling hero's most famous abilities are superhuman agility and teleportation. It'd be these qualities which allow him to surprise many monsters with his swift strikes and unpredictable movement patterns. With his skill in swordplay and talented ability use, many wolf level and even tiger level monsters will be slain by his proficiency. However, what stops him from going any further will be both his own physical limitations and stronger monsters' toughness. Nightcrawler's teleportation will make up for a lot of speed deficit against strong tiger level threats who can both move and strike at lightning speeds. However, his reflexes are not enough above human ranges to protect him from faster monsters or those who will be able to adapt to his attacks. While there's a possibility Nightcrawler could defeat some monsters via teleporting them into the air and then letting them drop, after a certain level, this won't work to kill tougher monsters due to their monstrous durability, and their own reflexes will cause Nightcrawler to be in serious danger each time he is close. With his strength, speed, and durability more akin to a peak or enhanced humans, Nightcrawler's great powers are hindered by his own physical limits within this verse. It's B-Class for Nightcrawler, with his teleportation and swordplay making up for his lack of superhuman qualities. Gambit brings a Cajun flair to the tier list with his explosive power set. His mutant abilities allow him to charge objects with kinetic energy and use them in multiple threatening ways. Usually carrying cards around as his go-to for this ability, they provide a quick and effective way to deal with many threats, while creating more powerful attacks requires longer charges. As you can expect, he knows how to use that bow staff too. Gambit is a skilled fighter who utilizes melee and range together in creative ways. However, his fancy tricks can only take him so far. While his enhanced attributes are above a typical person, his physical ability usually places him in competitive fights with the likes of Captain America, who fluctuates around peak or enhanced human depending on the writer, meaning that while Gambit is quick by ordinary human standards, it's not so quick when Tiger level threats are here to play. Additionally, even though Gambit can amp his speed using his abilities, it's not enough to deal with the relentless attacks from types like Combo Infinity, who not only will be testing that speed, but will be able to effectively knock Gambit down a few pegs with a single hit. As speed in battle is a big deal for One Punch Man, durability of those not as typically rapid will be tested quickly, and if the durability is not up to the standard, they will not last long against greater threats. B class for Gambit, which adds up since B class heroes are superhuman in physical nature, and while Gambit does have decent offense, bigger and badder monsters will not be too fussed about the speed and potency of his usual card throwing arsenal or tolerable striking strength. The best attacks Gambit could do to stronger monsters would simply take too much time given how fast they are, making it ultimately ineffective. Alright, it's time for my favorite X-Men character. Can you guess? Let's have a bet. I'll give you a few seconds, so say it out loud and see if you're right. If you are right, tell me in the comments and I'll say something nice to you. If you're wrong, you have to like the video and watch another video of mine after this. Okay, it's Cyclops. When I was growing up, a lot of people didn't rate this guy. Even many people today still think Cyclops is a bum. Those movies didn't do him any favors either, but those of us who enjoyed the comics, games, and cartoons during those years know that Cyclops is, and always has been, the real deal. As I like to put it, Cyclops is the Captain America of the X-Men. Yes, he's not the strongest of them all, but he earns respect through leadership, strategy, and sheer will. Oh, and those optic blasts are pretty freaking strong too. As a matter of fact, when Cyclops lets it rip, those blasts of his can be dialed up to rival or even exceed the power of nukes, all the way to bursts which can blow through mountains or reach into the ranges of planetary force. What I'm saying to you is, in theory, if Cyclops goes to his limit and charges his stronger optic blasts, he can actually kill most monsters of One Punch Man with his mutant ability. So it's S-class, right? Well, not so fast. While Cyclops does have power which could even have the Monster Association cadres handing in their resignation letter, Cyclops himself is a physical being who usually operates around the level of peak human or enhanced human. Essentially, he's comparable in speed, strength, and durability to the likes of Moon Knight, Daredevil, or maybe those in a tier higher, depending again on the comic run or animated series. This means that while he could one-shot a demon level threat like Deep Sea King, he is actually more likely to get speed blitzed and knocked through a wall into unconsciousness if said monster is not playing around. Again, we're ranking these characters based on their general everyday scalings and not contradictory feats which yo-yo between comic runs and matchups, so Cyclops' canon physicality will land him in a lot of trouble with stronger tiger levels and certainly demon levels, even if he has the ability to blow through dragons when it comes down to sheer attack power. Cyclops' aiming speed isn't superhuman enough, but granting that his actual optic blasts themselves should fire at the speed of light, Cyclops will be able to catch a lot of monsters slipping if he hits them unaware or if they let him make the first move. Some monsters like to talk after all, and so I'm struggling between A class and a My Mask tier. It gets overlooked a lot in One Punch Man since it's taken for granted past a certain stage by a lot of viewers, but to be an S class you really do need to be a powerhouse in most physical stats, especially speed, unless you have something which helps you survive in the face of significant combat speed inferiority. And since Cyclops does not have that, it's a My Mask tier for me. I'm choosing this because unlike nearly all of A class, save for a My Mask and Saitama, Cyclops can legitimately defeat demon and dragon level threats alone under the right circumstances, but he will also be losing or failing to beat demon levels and maybe even some tiger levels alone somewhat often too because of his lacking speed and durability, which a My Mask is going to find contention with. And who better to follow up on Cyclops with than Wolverine? A lot of what I've said just now applies to Wolverine too, so I'll try to avoid the same talking points. Wolverine's adamantium claws will be highly effective in cutting through just about any monster he comes across regardless of the threat level, and his impressive healing factor will provide him with a great level of survivability that the other mutants on this list so far cannot claim to improve their rankings. Naturally, Wolverine is someone who should be stronger and faster than Cyclops, however, as proven by many fights against both Cyclops and other comparable people, Wolverine is certainly no speedster. To the ordinary human, he is above what they can keep up with, yet the rabid Wolverine would be seen as slow in battle compared to the likes of middle demon level threats and above. Additionally, while Wolverine has great attack potency to where his claws can hurt even the likes of the Hulk in some instances, his range and level of force will make it hard to put down big durable foes even if he can sink his claws into them. Essentially, while Wolverine is a fierce bundle of aggression, he's still going to be manhandled by nearly any demon level threat in sheer physicality, and his claws are not a one-shot type of attack that can just blow large entities away. Wolverine is going to have to work at it in many cases, and in nearly all cases, he's going to be getting knocked around like a pinball by levels of force which may not kill him, but can still stun, slow, and perhaps even knock him out. However, that healing factor will make a lot of this less of an issue. While he may struggle to kill a demon level foe, in some cases he will be able to tirelessly go at it and whittle it down until landing a vital strike or compounding damage to seal the deal. Unlike Gambit or Nightcrawler, who will be in hospital after a direct hit or two from even Tiger threats, Wolverine has the means to keep stabbing at the problem after his wounds heal, making him a similar case to Zombie Man. For this, Wolverine lands in the My Mask tier. But Zombie Man's in S-Class, so let me stop you right there. Remember, My Mask became A-Class number 1 to block newer heroes who don't represent his expected level of S-Class power. So someone like Zombie Man wouldn't have made it in after My Mask's influential rise, as explained in the tiering section. Secondly, S-Class heroes, as alluded to earlier, have a consistent level of combat speed Wolverine doesn't, allowing them to keep up with or blitz massively hypersonic or even light speed opponents who would be the type of monsters Wolverine would struggle to hit at all, let alone defeat, all down to the difference in speed. It has to be remembered that class placements first come down to your effectiveness as a hero, so even if many demon level threats couldn't necessarily kill Wolverine, Wolverine's inability to stop them either would be to My Mask's disapproval. Again, for every fight against the Hulk where he's hanging in there with someone that strong, we've also seen him get trounced by Sabretooth, who is a lot weaker. And for every fight where his speed lets him get close to Spider-Man, there's others of him going 50-50 with Captain America or even the Punisher. Then compare that to Deep Sea King, who appeared from the pavement to someone's flank up on a skyscraper who was observing him the entire time in the blink of an eye. This is why I specified generalized versions of these comic characters, because we know the foundational concept of Wolverine is that he doesn't fight like a speedster, so we're not going to pretend like he does. Those two sections were a little long, but those characters were a good pairing to get some key elements explained on the ranking logic for effective powers which lack enough raw stats to go all the way to S in this verse. So hopefully that should make the thinking process clear. Jubilee has always been a little underwhelming for me, so if we're going by her general showings, her fireworks will be pretty handy to stun and blind monsters, yet they're not going to be doing much trouble to tougher monsters outside of that. And once they decide to get on her case properly, her durability and speed isn't going to hold up. B-Class for Jubilee. Angel is another character who has a useful ability, but he lacks any real oomph to really hurt monsters that are above the pay grade of peak humans. And since nothing he can do will contain enough force to kill Tiger levels or above for the most part, in One Punch Man, it just makes him a weak hero with a very useful ability. I know some people may say, oh, but the monsters can't kill him if they can't reach him, which is true, but again, this is hero effectiveness. So if he's flying up in the air out of reach while a monster is slaughtering everyone down on the ground, he's not really doing a good job, is he? Congratulations, Angel. You technically didn't lose the fight because you didn't die, but everyone else did. B-Class for Angel, and those wings are the only thing stopping him from being lower. And Shadowcat, unfortunately, isn't ranking high for me. Again, a neat ability, but without the raw attributes to really hurt monsters once they start getting into the solid Tiger levels. She's either going to be useless against tough monsters even if unable to lose, or she'll get blitzed or one-shot the moment she's no longer intangible. C-Class for Shadowcat, since last time I checked, her general character power scale should be more or less normal, but with phasing as her main ability. Again, lovely ability, just can't do much without super strong attacks, speed, or durability to accompany it. Anyway, I've been talking enough about how some of these cats can't take a full-on smack from a demon or dragon level monster without going from X-Man to X-conscious. So here's a big boy who can, Colossus. This guy's strength is heavy metal, no pun intended, and has matched the Thing in arm wrestling, fought off the Hulk, and even held the Juggernaut back. I tell the monsters that he comes from Russia with love, but there's not going to be anything romantic about how he smashes them, and Colossus can not only dish it out, but he can take it too. A mutant of his power can stand and bang all day, so he's effectively going to be another Darkshine, but with more proven levels of strength and durability than what we've seen of even the S-Class hero. Sorry Darkshine. The only pitfall for Colossus should be his combat speed. However, in all truth, he should be fast enough to make something happen eventually, and since he's not going to be taking a knee to most demons and dragons, Colossus has it in the bag to deal some real damage where it counts and withstand as much force as it takes to do it. I'm going with S-Class for Colossus. He might not be very effective against very fast monsters he cannot strike reliably, however, he will not go down in most of those cases and will be a great shield for humanity until he lands a tide-turning blow, or holds out for someone faster to come along and finalize it. Storm is up next, and many years ago I likely would have thrown her into B class or something and called it a day. However, over the years Marvel has upgraded her more and more to where her general level is now accepted to be a lot higher. Storm is an Omega level mutant with insane versatility in her powers. Lightning, thunderstorms, blizzards, hurricanes, you name it, she can ruin your day with it. Seriously, she's got so much going on with her power set these days that if you looked it up, you'd end up getting tired before you finished reading all of it. S-Class for Storm, since she has a devastating amount of elemental versatility in her arsenal mixed with the proven capability to fight with very prominent characters who would be S-Class in nature themselves, such as Magneto. In the older days, I'd have said her powers would have still seen her get speed blitzed at higher levels, but from what I can tell, those days are gone for the more modern Storm. And if you thought Storm could give monsters a hard time, then Jean Grey is going to have them questioning monsterization entirely. Even without touching on the Phoenix, Jean is an Omega level mutant with outrageous levels of psychic power. Telekinesis and telepathy of the highest level will essentially see her demolish monsters both physically and mentally with levels of domination that would be frightening. I know I don't need to convince you of anything here. Jean Grey has always been an established powerhouse even since the old days, and with the ability to destroy monsters with her incredible psychic strength, she has the options of crushing opponents with sheer force or making their thoughts play a game of Twister until they can't even remember who they are. All of this before the Phoenix even comes into play, which elevates her power to the cosmic levels, and as it should already be clear, S-Class is the only place for someone like Jean Grey to be placed into. For the same reasons concerning the telepathic abilities, Professor X would also be S-Class due to having the ability to overload monsters' brains with information, knock out or even fry their consciousness, or outright shut down their mind entirely. I will say though, I imagine he wouldn't be going out into the field much. It's a funny mental image for a city needing an S-Class hero pronto, and Xavier is just slowly wheeling out of the Hero Association base like, I'm on my way. Then everything is already solved by the time he's made it there. Yeah, he'd be S-Class, but I imagine he'd be saved for extended events which aren't settled quickly, or protecting a prime location like the main Hero Association headquarters. Iceman is a character who maybe in the early days could have found himself in A class or so, but again over the years he has steadily built himself up into a more and more cracked version of what he had originally been. Iceman can not only instantly freeze anything within and around him at Omega level mutant levels, but can manipulate matter on a molecular level with his ice powers too. This guy's control over ice is so busted that even if you shatter his entire body, he'll just reform back into full form from drops of water, or rearrange cubes of ice you smashed apart back to where they were. What you essentially have with Iceman is a mutant who can either freeze you instantly, or play in your face taking all your best attacks while reforming at the greatest of ease, all while making you experience the full force of your own personal ice age. He can literally freeze most monsters to death by putting their body temperatures to levels which are no longer sustainable for living, devastating them from both inside and out. Iceman also has a lot of crazy outliers which I'm not taking into account since this is a generalized version, so freezing space-time at a quantum level or similar things isn't what I've got in mind here, yet he's still crazy powerful even outside of all of those. With such outrageous area of effect, survivability, and versatility, even if Iceman isn't as fast as some high demons or even dragons, his mutant power set will allow him to overcome the speed difference, and once they get caught in one freeze frame, Death's Chill is on its way. S-Class for Iceman, because the power creep this guy got over the years has just raised his general level enough for it to make sense now. If it's a nerfed Iceman, or when they treat him like a dunce, it'd be lower, but again, generally, he should be fine. B Beast is next, and he's truly a classic. An extraordinary genius with an animalistic body that grants him low levels of superhuman abilities like strength, agility, and so on. He is more or less a furry Tarzan with a gifted mind. Physically, while stronger than any ordinary human, and probably above peak humans too, he isn't some kind of super strength guy in the way that Colossus, the Thing, or anyone like that is. He's below that, and more within the ranges that you'd expect to find in B or A class. I'm going off memory here, but 9 times out of 10, I always remember Beast fighting his battles with the arms and legs that God gave him, and I rarely remember him using some kind of device or weapon on a consistent enough basis for me to say that he'd make some kind of S-class weapon to be a routine piece of equipment for him here. I'm very well aware he'd be S-class in mind, however in terms of fighting monsters physically, he's in A-class for me, and those physicals of his own will see him get blitzed and battered in most scenarios, even by low or mid demons. Again, I'm not saying he can't make good equipment, but from whenever I've seen him fight, most of the time he is just swinging around out there like Tarzan while trying to get it done, so that's what I'm going to stick to him with for a generalized version. But I will grant Beast will be a mental powerhouse in One Punch Man regardless of the hero classification he gets. If you want to say he makes something that puts him in S-class, I'm fine with that. And finally, we have Rogue. Now, I'm aware that there's Rogue versions where she's had extended periods of time with the powers of Captain Marvel or Wonder Man, however that's not going to cut it for me since it feels weird to rank her in this verse while she's got the power set of someone else completely unrelated to the video. So this is going to be Rogue in general without some preloaded power boost from another Marvel heavyweight. With that in mind, Rogue is a mutant who can absorb a person's memories, skills, life force, and superpowers through physical touch. Without this active, she is going to get absolutely destroyed in One Punch Man since she's just more or less a regular person without it. However, if she uses her powers to take the strengths of monsters or fellow heroes, this is where Rogue can do very well. However, prolonged contact can seriously harm or even kill the person she touches, and even the ability alone could be considered invasive by some. So you'd have to assume not every hero is going to consent to Rogue snapping up their powers, memories, and whatever whenever she needs a power boost. Essentially, this makes Rogue very hard to spot for a place in this list because she's as much C-class as she is S-class. If characters like Blast or Tatsumaki let her get a dose of their powers every so often, she's gonna be loving life and beating monsters up like crazy. But if it doesn't work out, or she gets caught lacking and the monsters she's fighting just blitz her before she can touch them, or they stay out of range because of their attack style and defeat her with projectiles, then she's going to be a lot less handy. Like I said before, you can probably argue any class, and given her absorption is temporary, 1 week she might be S-class, then next week she might be A. It all depends on what's happening and who's letting themselves get touched by her, or who is even around when something kicks off. It's easy to say Rogue will just always be touching an S-class hero, but what is she doing? Living in their pocket? I'm going to go with a Masked because of the inconsistency and reliance on others. But again, if you think S, that's fine, and if you think less, that's fine too. I'm not a Rogue expert, so outside of any outliers or short-term story buffs, if there's anything to add, let me know. Anyway, that's been generalized versions of the X-Men ranked in the Hero Association from One Punch Man. Comics are mighty inconsistent at times with all the different writers and runs, so not everything is easy to rank, nor will you probably agree with all of it, but that's where I've landed on them for today, so I hope you enjoyed it and agreed with at least a few of them. Like, subscribe for more One Punch Man related content, and catch you soon.